Um, okay, I will say this. Whatever you believe about what is happening, whatever you believe will happen, will be completely wrong. Whatever happened in the past will not apply to what's going to happen right now. This is a unique war. This is something that we cannot use history, the lens of history, to understand. Okay? You go back to the Russia-Ukraine war. I still don't understand why this war is still going on. Russia won this war about 2 years ago. The Ukrainians have lost about 1 million fighting age men. Now they are dragging elderly men, kidnapping them, and putting them on the battlefield. A third of the country has already fled Ukraine. I don't understand why this war is still going on. So, from a geopolitical perspective, from a historical perspective, from a military perspective, what's going on in Ukraine doesn't really make any sense to me. Why hasn't Ukraine just surrendered in negotiated terms? Putin doesn't even want all of Ukraine. He just wants what is traditionally Russian, okay, which includes the four oblasts up to the Dnipro River, and then he might want Odessa as well. But who cares? You've lost the war. Just give it to him, and let's just have peace, right? Why are you still fighting? In fact, the Europeans are saying, like, we're gonna draft, man, like Germany, Romania, they're like passing laws to draft men into military service. And I think that the Europeans are planning by 2029 to enter the war fully in Ukraine. And you're like, well, this makes no sense at all. Why are you doing this? What's the point? The war is lost. Why are you sending young men to die in Ukraine? And no one even knows why they want to do this as well. Remember, Russia has nuclear weapons. You don't want to poke the bear too much, because then you might end up destroying the world. So the traditional understanding of how wars are fought, why they're fought, I don't think you can use them anymore. Okay, I think we're living in a very special time. And the framework that I think you have to use is eschatological, religious. They're doing this not to win wars, to control resources, to obtain oil, to control trade routes. They're doing this for religious purposes, to achieve a certain world that they believe will reflect the divine will of God. So there's a news item where a commander told his troops, this is an American commander, and he told his American troops to not be afraid of this war in Iran. And the reason why is that this war will bring about the second coming of Jesus. Trump is divinely ordained. Okay, God picked him in order to start a war in the Middle East that will lead to a chain of events that will bring about the second coming of Jesus. I know this sounds crazy, okay? But keep this in mind, because what's going to happen over the next few months or next few years will even be more crazy. All right. So one thing that's really worrying is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third holiest site in the Muslim world. Only Mecca and Medina are even more holy. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is where Muhammad ascended to heaven. And there's talk that there'll be a false flag where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is destroyed. And why would it be destroyed? Well, because the Al-Aqsa Mosque sits on a site of the Second Temple, or Solomon's Temple. Okay, and that is considered the holiest site in the Jewish tradition. It is where God lives, right? So if you want God to return to the world, you need to build him a nice home. And that is Solomon's Temple, the third temple, they call it. And so they need to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But if you destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque, this will ignite a religious war between the Muslims and the Jews. Every Muslim will be morally obligated to seek jihad against Israel if you were to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So why would they do that? Okay, I'm not saying they're going to do that, but I'm saying, like, things are going to happen. Things may happen that make absolutely no sense. And what I'm telling people, okay, is, first of all, get in the mindset where wherever you believe about the world, it's going to be thrown out the window, okay? Because if you just use conventional logic to analyze this war in Iran, it makes no sense. Even today, a week after the war started, even though a lot of damage has been done, even though a lot of people have been killed. No one knows why this war is being fought. Trump and his people have not articulated any real reason why they seek to destroy Iran. The most we have is at first, Trump is like, okay, we want to get rid of nuclear weapons. We want to get rid of the possibility that Iran engaged in uranium enrichment. But the Omanis, who are mediating these talks between the Americans and the Iranians, have already told us that the Iranians had already agreed to zero, absolutely zero uranium enrichment, which is something that they were, adamant about for the longest time, right? They said we are willing to forever forgo our uranium enrichment program before they insisted that we are empowered to use uranium enrichment for civilian purposes. And they're like, okay, fine, we'll give that up as well, okay? But not only that, but they relate to the Omanis that, hey, not only are we willing to give up our uranium enrichment program, but we're also willing to negotiate about our proxies, Hezbollah, and the Shia militias, Hamas, and the Houthis, but we're also willing to negotiate our ballistic missiles program. The Iranians were willing to give Americans everything that they demanded, which were impossible demands to begin with. And the Americans still attacked. So please explain to me that, okay? That's point number one. Then point number two is Trump then said that, okay, where we attacked because, well, Israel was going to attack first, and we know the Iranians would respond by attacking us, so we have to preempt the Iranians by attacking them first, okay? But then you're like, why didn't you just tell the Iranians not to attack then, right? You are the superpower. You're the ones financing Israel. You're the ones giving Israel all the weapons it has. Just say, if you attack Iran, you're on your own. All right. And now what they're saying is, well, it's because we're controlled by Israel. Are you really telling me a nation of like 9 million people in a desert is able to control an empire of like 330 million people? That's complete utter nonsense. Okay. So all the reasons that they're giving us make no sense. It's all lies. It's all deception. Okay. What they really want to do is destroy the world. That's what they really want to do. They want to destroy the world because that will force Jesus to return. That is part of Christian Zionist eschatology. And again, you don't have to believe me, okay? But like, ask yourself this. First of all, like, why is this war continuing? Okay, number one, why is this war continuing? Okay. Number two is, why is Trump asking for unconditional surrender? Why is he refusing to negotiate at all? Number three is, why would America want to send in ground troops? Like what's the purpose of that? I mean, like, aren't you destroying Iran from the air already? Why do you have to send in ground troops, man? Number three, okay. And then what you'll see later on is the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The plan is this, okay? There's this diabolical plan where Israel destroy this mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but they will pretend it's an Iranian missile, okay? So somehow they're going to embed Mossad operatives in Iran to fire a ballistic hypersonic at this Al-Aqsa Mosque, destroying it. And then what they'll say is, like, you see, the Iranians are doing this to provoke us. It's Iranians who are planting this false flag, okay? And what they want to do is create this war between the Arabs and the Persians. So these people are insane. They're crazy. This entire thing is crazy. Take whatever you believe about the world and throw it out the window, okay? Just do that. And then you might understand what's going on. You might understand what's going on. But if you insist on reading history and say, well, in 1979, the Shah was overthrown and the Americans are pissed about that, you're not gonna get anywhere here.
Jiang, do you see the war getting nuclear?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay. All right. So already discussing the possibility of nuclear weapons. And the reason why is that a lot of Iran's ballistic missile capabilities are buried deep underground. And so you cannot actually destroy these facilities using conventional weapons. Even the mother of all bombs, right? Like a huge bomb. Bunker busters get you nowhere, okay? So a tactical nuclear nuke would not destroy the underground facilities, but it would basically seal the entrances. It would make it unlivable. It would cause so much radiation. Okay, so that if you want to win the war conventionally, then you might have to use tactical nuclear weapons, especially if the ground invasion goes wrong. Okay, but there's certain problems with the use of tactical nuclear weapons. Okay, the first thing is this: Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, has already said that Russia will ensure the success and the survival of the Iranians. All right, so already there's talk among the Russians that they will support Iran fully at some point. Okay, already we know that Russia is providing targeting information and intelligence to Iranians, and that's what NATO did during the Ukraine war. So basically, Russia is just doing what NATO did in Ukraine. It's like payback, right? And eventually, I think what's going to happen is this: if there is actually a ground invasion, and if there's actually a threat that Israel or the United States will use tactical nuclear weapons because the war is going wrong, I think what's going to happen, okay, and it's just a guess, okay, but I think a possibility is that Putin announces that Iran is under the Russian nuclear umbrella. An attack, a tactical nuclear strike against Iran will be considered a tactical nuclear strike against Russia, and Russia will respond with tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine and against Europe. Okay, that is a real possibility. So that's that's one point. Another point is this: we assume the Israelis and the Americans want to win this war militarily, but like let's just think, let's ask yourself, let's just say that they want this war because it's for eschatological reasons. Okay, if you actually look at the eschatology of the Jews and the Christian Zionists, if you look at all eschatologies, America should not be in the Middle East. It is against the will of God that America is in the Middle East. Therefore, America needs to leave the Middle East, right, for the eschatology to take place. The eschatology requires for Israel to fight the world. America is not involved, right? So how do you get the American empire, which supports the GCC nations, out of the Middle East? CENTCOM is this vast empire unto itself that has like dozens of military bases throughout the Middle East. It has like 50,000 soldiers, right? Well, you get America out of the Middle East if America loses this war, right? So everyone's on the assumption that America is entering this war to win. But it's also possible America entered this war in order to lose, in which case everything's going according to plan. All right. So again, your logic, your understanding of history, your common sense, your belief in the world, fall out the door. Okay. America is not in this war to win. America's in this war to lose.
Then, John, I think with the case of oil, with the case of war, Greater Israel, it always comes to a concept of how BRICS would react. What is the future for BRICS? What is the future? Because in my opinion, the South Caucasus is the heart of Eurasia, and how do you see BRICS? Because India, somehow you see India is so silent right now. They're dependent on Russia, and we have, I would say, somehow some sort of perfect combination of energy and production within BRICS. With Iran, Russia, and China, a perfect some sort of partnership between these players. And how do you see the whole game in influencing the concept of BRICS?
The BRICS doesn't matter. I've never thought about BRICS. I've never researched BRICS. If someone talks about BRICS, I clue out. I think about something else. Okay, I don't care about BRICS. Why? Because today, okay, we live in the law of the jungle. Who is strong wins. Who is weak dies. Who is strong are those who are willing to fight for what they believe in. If you are willing to commit military power, you matter in this world. If you are not willing to commit military power, you don't matter in the world. It's that simple. Forget BRICS. It doesn't matter. Forget this, like, Shanghai Gold Corridor. Forget about, this unit currency. Forget about trade. None of this matters anymore. We are now in a new world where it's a law of the jungle, might makes right. If you're willing to die for what you believe in, if you're willing to send troops to fight for what you believe in, then you matter. If you are not willing to do so, then you'll just sit back and be destroyed one by one. It's that simple.
Yeah. John, the other situation with the case of the Middle East would be how Iran as a country may decide about its future, because you know what has happened in Russia when the war, before the war in Ukraine started. They were people who were thinking that they can make a partnership with the West, with the United States. And we have two sort of forces in both Russia and Iran, and these forces who are mostly neoliberals or close to liberals in the United States. They feel that the United States may be a we may trust the United States, we may negotiate with them, but as the war in Russia, in Ukraine, and as the war in we are witnessing the war in Iran, and these conflict is this is a huge conflict in the Middle East. And how do you see the politicians, the decision makers in these countries deciding about their future? Where is the future in their mind?
Um, First of all, we assume nation states are the main organizing unit of the world. We also assume that the leaders of these nation states actually matter. And I think both of these assumptions are problematic. Um, Maybe the people who control Russia, China, the United States, Israel are the same people. I mean, there is that possibility, right? So, again, I think you have to, given this war in Iran, you have to clear your mind. Okay, you have to examine your own assumptions about the world. That this is a war of resources between Iran and the United States. It I don't think it is. And again, time will tell. Okay, I don't want to say too much because people will think I'm insane, but I don't think that nation states are really the powers that people think they are. There are other there are other organizations, there are other entities that are above nation states. We saw that in the Epstein files, right? Everyone assumed that Jeffrey Epstein was this Mossad agent or CIA who was blackmailing these powerful Americans in order to garner support for Israel. But there were certain things that happened when we actually read the Epstein files that's very confusing. First of all, why are Bill Gates and Reid Hoffman, why are they going to Jeffrey Epstein begging for money? Bill Gates was the richest man in the world. Reid Hoffman is a billionaire. Why are they going to Jeffrey Epstein and begging for money, right? And then you have Elon Musk, who's very wealthy, and like he wants to party with Jeffrey Epstein. He's sort of almost like bothering Jeffrey Epstein, like, hey man, I hear you for these wonderful parties. Can I join you? And then they use these code words like pizza and grape soda. All right. So again, the Epstein files, if you just look at the Epstein files, the way you think power works, the way you think that the world is run is probably wrong. It probably is.